I can start the new year with letting you know about two significant clergy moves within the diocese that you may have read about in the newsletter. But if not, just to let you know that John Graveston is going to be moving to the position of Vicar of St. Peter's in Caversham after Easter. John seems to be an ideal fit for that position, and they're very excited to welcome him. It does mean, of course, that we here at the Diocesan Office and across the diocese who've had John work with us in the youth and families space will be losing that, but we'll see what we can do in terms of filling that in the future as well. And of course, Father Michael and the people of All Saints will also be saying goodbye to him for now. We have a similar situation in Upper Clutha, where we have the sadness that Damon will be stopping his long tenure there as vicar, but will be, to my pleasure, taking on the role of ministry educator full-time. So across the diocese, you will get to see a lot more of Damon, and I'm sure you'll all be as pleased about that as I am. As we start this year, I want again to focus on what is the center of everything we do and the reason we're here, which is this whole idea of good news. Now, some of you will know that I've been asking people for years, what is the good news that we live and we preach and we know? And I've had some wonderful answers. Often it's around the security we have of knowing that God is always with us and will never leave us. There was one person though, Chris Dodds in the Rokatipu, who when I asked him that, answered without hesitation, Jesus. He went on to expand on that, but that was his first response. What's the good news? Essentially, it's Jesus, and everything else flows from that. So if that's the case, some of you may be puzzled to find when our gospel conversations launch again next week, that we this year are going to be looking at the Old Testament and trying to find the gospel or the good news in the Old Testament. Now, the reason that might seem a bit strange is, of course, if Jesus is the good news, well, Jesus doesn't appear as Jesus until the New Testament. So what's going on here? There are a whole lot of ways of thinking about it. I won't go through them all today. But first for me is we actually cannot understand the good news of Jesus in the New Testament unless we understand something of the stories and the teachings that the people who talked about Jesus knew about. Matthew, for example, who is the focus of our lectionary this year, he's forever quoting the Old Testament, and mostly it's pretty puzzling. If we don't understand the context that Matthew is speaking in, we don't understand the context of these quotes, then it's as if he's throwing sentences from a foreign language into his writing. But there's much more than that. Martin Luther famously called the Old Testament the swaddling bands of Jesus. So it's not all Jesus, but Jesus is absolutely in there. The approach I like right now has to do with the way that our understanding of things can completely change when something new happens. Imagine for a moment that a friend of yours suddenly started acting really strangely and doing all sorts of odd things and being a bit secretive. That might have you completely puzzled until your birthday came around and you found that the friend was throwing you a surprise birthday party. And then all these things that had puzzled you suddenly made sense. Now, for the New Testament writers, that's kind of what Jesus did. He made sense of everything in the Old Testament. It's why John, at the beginning of his gospel, starts his gospel with the same words that Genesis starts with, in the beginning. Because what he's saying is, now that we know Jesus, we can go back to the beginning of Genesis and it transforms our understanding of everything that follows. So that's what we're going to be trying to do this year. Where's the good news? Where is Jesus, even in the amazing, puzzling, sometimes horrifying pages of our Old Testament. And it should be a fun journey. But in the meantime, blessings on all of you as you launch into what may be an amazing, puzzling, perhaps sometimes horrifying new year. Who knows what's going to come? But what we can know is that in our future, just as in our past, Jesus is always to be found. God bless you.